welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be exploring something that I think really hits home for a lot of you guys out there, especially those of you navigating the whole marriage thing within that red pill framework. It can feel like you're trying to figure out those hidden, those covert contracts, right?
Yeah.
Understand the dynamics, all that. And it's like, where do you even begin? It's like walking a tightrope, right?
Absolutely.
So we're diving into this book, The Double Bind of Toxic Masculinity by Conrad Riker. And from what I've gathered, he's been down this road himself.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from that personal experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes his take on this double bind idea so interesting.
Right.
He doesn't just say the obvious stuff, like, oh, men are told to be strong but also sensitive.
Right. We've all heard that.
He digs deeper, like way back. He goes into the historical roots, which helps us understand how we even got to this point.
It's like, how did we end up here?
Exactly. And that historical context is crucial, especially for you guys in the red pill community. Because if you want to deconstruct those covert contracts, understand how those power dynamics shifted and how it affects you today.
You got to know where it all began, right?
Exactly.
So let's unpack this historical context a bit. How does Riker actually explain this whole evolution of masculinity? I mean, we all know the traditional roles, right? Provider, protector, all that. But like, where did those even come from? And how have they changed over time?
So he takes us way back, right, talking about how masculinity was often tied to, basically survival. He uses the example of Sparta, where physical strength, that warrior culture was everything. It wasn't just about being tough.
Right.
It was about protecting the community, a deep responsibility.
So these rules weren't just random.
No, not at all.
They came from somewhere.
They were born out of necessity. It makes sense. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if your tribe's survival depends on your ability to, defend it, hunt,
Yeah.
provide,
Yeah.
strength and stoicism, those become pretty valuable traits.
Absolutely. But then things shifted. Right.
Right. So when did this double bind thing, when did that start to emerge?
Well, Riker argues that the Industrial Revolution was a big turning point. Suddenly, the focus went to men being providers in a different way. It wasn't so much about physical strength anymore. It was more about economic power.
Okay.
Factories replaced field,
Right.
and the breadwinner was born. That's when we start seeing those seeds of the double bind being planted.
So instead of hunting for food, men were expected to, work in factories?
Yes.
Punch in, punch out, bring home that paycheck.
Yeah.
I can see how that shift, going from a world where masculinity was all about those tangible skills, hunting, fighting, building things with your hands, to a world where it's tied to how much money you make.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole new set of pressures.
Absolutely. And it didn't happen overnight. It was gradual. With each generation, more and more societal expectations piled on. And as those expectations changed, so did the impact on men, logically, I mean.
And this is where it gets real, for a lot of guys. We're
Real.
talking about the red pill community here. Guys actively trying to understand the pressures, the expectations.
Yeah.
So how does Riker connect all this historical stuff to the mental health challenges that a lot of men face today?
He talks about suppressing emotion.
Oh, yeah.
And we've all heard it, right? Man up, don't be a wimp, boys don't cry.
All the time.
These messages, they stick with you from childhood. They make a difference, And he points to the suicide rates among men, which are terrifying. And he links it, at least partly, to this inability to express emotions in a healthy way.
It's like we're taught to bottle it all up,
Yeah.
mentalize. And it takes a toll.
Creates pressure, like a pressure cooker,
Yeah.
It can lead to isolation, anger, even despair.
And for guys in the red pill community who are already questioning the whole traditional gender role thing, the societal expectations, it's got to resonate even more.
Absolutely. They're peeling back those layers, trying to understand why they feel the way they do, why they struggle. Riker gives them a framework.
To make sense of it all.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
helps them see how it's all connected to these bigger historical and societal forces.
You said earlier that Riker doesn't just state the obvious.
Right.
He goes deeper. Can you give an example, like how he delves into the real world consequences of this double bind?
He tells this story about a guy named John who's successful in his career, but he struggles to be there emotionally for his partner.
Okay.
John grew up in a home where men were providers, not nurturers. Expressing emotion, that was seen as weakness.
Right.
So he has a really hard time connecting with his partner on that deeper level, being vulnerable, offering the emotional support she needs.
Man, that's so relatable for so many guys, especially those trying to make their marriages work within, that red pill framework. They see the value in being supportive.
But it's a struggle.
It's like those ingrained beliefs, from years of conditioning. It makes it feel like a constant uphill battle. So it's not just about knowing the history.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing how that history plays out in our lives every day.
Exactly. And that's what makes Riker's work so powerful, right?
Yeah.
It connects those dots between the big societal forces and our own personal experiences. And for those of you in the Red Pill community trying to deconstruct those covert contracts within your marriages,
Right?
understanding where those contracts come from, how they've been shaped by history and societal norm, that's the first step toward changing them.
This is already like mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've only just started. There's so much more to unpack, you know?
Oh, definitely.
The role of different institutions, media, how to reclaim authentic masculinity. I've got a lot to cover in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the double bind of toxic masculinity. You know, we've been kind of exploring those historical roots of masculinity and how those historical shifts have kind of led to this paradox, right? This double bind that men face today. But for you guys, you know, in the married red pill community, I think the next thing you got to unpack is the role of institutions. Like, how have institutions like family, education, even religion contributed to all this?
Yeah, and Riker's analysis of these institutions, it's especially insightful for you guys navigating marriage, you know, through that red pill lens.
Yeah.
Because he shines a light on those unspoken rules, those covert contracts that, you know, kind of govern our relationships. He starts with the family, which, you know, it's the first institution we encounter.
All right.
It's where we learn about gender roles,
Yeah.
you know, about what it means to be a man or a woman.
And for a lot of us, you know, those early lessons, they were shaped by traditional values, right? Dad's the provider, protector, the one who disciplines. Mom's the nurturer, the caregiver, the emotional core. These roles, they seem natural, but they're also like deeply ingrained, passed down through generations.
And while there's nothing inherently wrong with, you know, traditional family structures, Riker argues that they can become a problem when they get too rigid,
Okay.
too inflexible, when they don't adapt to how life is today.
So it's not about, you know, bashing traditional values.
No.
It's more about recognizing how those values can sometimes create this like pressure, this feeling of being boxed in, especially for men trying to balance those traditional expectations with, you know, their own evolving understanding of themselves and their relationship.
Right. And that's where that whole red pill idea of covert contracts comes in. Those unspoken agreements, those expectations that we often have in our relationships, even if we don't realize it.
It's like we're on autopilot, following the script from like who knows how long ago,
Yep.
without ever asking if it even makes sense anymore.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, I think Riker's analysis of institutions is so relevant for the married red pill community. It helps us see how those contracts, those covert contracts, are often shaped by things outside of ourselves, by the institutions that have molded our understanding of gender roles, relationships, and even our own identity.
So let's break it down then. How does Riker specifically address education? Like, what's its role in perpetuating this double bind?
He points to the dropout rates among boys,
Oh, yeah.
which are, you know, pretty high. And he links it, at least in part, to a lack of emotional support in the education system and a lack of positive male role model. Boys are often told to just toughen up, you know, suppress their emotions.
Which can lead to feeling isolated, frustrated.
Exactly.
And that disconnect, that feeling of not being seen, not being understood, it doesn't just stay in the classroom, right? It can impact a man's self-worth, his relationships, even his career.
Absolutely. And then there's the workplace itself. Riker argues that the professional world, it often rewards those traditional masculine traits,
Oh, right.
like assertiveness, risk-taking.
Right.
But then it criticizes men for embodying those very same qualities.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah, be strong, but not too strong.
Right.
Be ambitious, but don't be ruthless. It's this balancing act. And a lot of men feel like they're constantly on edge trying to figure out the right way to be.
This ties back to those covert contracts, right?
It does. The workplace has its own set of unspoken rules,
Right.
expectations about how men should behave.
And for men who are already, you know, questioning those traditional roles, it can feel like a losing battle.
Yeah, it's like they're playing a game where the rules keep changing.
And they're always getting penalized for not knowing what the latest rules are.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about an institution that often gets overlooked in these conversations, which is religion.
Oh.
Riker delves into how religious teachings can be kind of paradoxical. Like, they demand strength and courage and steadfastness in men, but then they criticize those same qualities.
That's interesting. I mean, religion often emphasizes those traditional gender roles, right?
It does.
Man as the head of the household, the spiritual leader, the protector. But at the same time, there's this focus on humility, on compassion, on turning the other cheek. It does seem kind of contradictory.
Exactly. And it can create real conflict for men,
Yeah.
especially those trying to, you know, reconcile their faith with their evolving understanding of masculinity.
It's like they're being pulled in two different directions.
Yeah.
Be strong, but be humble. Be a leader, but be a servant. How do you even balance those messages?
It's a tough question, and one that each person has to kind of wrestle with on their own. But Riker's point, I think, is that these conflicting messages are all part of the larger double bind.
Yeah.
They contribute to the confusion, the feeling that men are being judged no matter what they do.
Now, we can't talk about these forces that shape masculinity without addressing the big one, right?
Yeah.
Media,
Yeah.
popular culture, movies, music, video games, all that. Social media,
It's everywhere.
it's constantly bombarding us with messages about what it means to be a man.
And this is where the whole red pill philosophy really shines a light, right?
Right.
It's about recognizing how these media narratives, they often reinforce those traditional, sometimes toxic masculine stereotypes.
The stoic hero, the action star,
Yeah.
the alpha male. These images are everywhere,
Yeah.
and they can really impact how men see themselves.
And it's not just the images themselves, it's the message behind them, right?
Right.
Those unspoken rules. Be strong, be silent, be successful, don't show any weakness.
And for guys in the red pill community who are already skeptical of, mainstream narratives, it can feel like.
Propaganda almost.
Yeah.
Forcing those very power structures that they're trying to challenge.
So it's not about rejecting all media. It's more about being aware, being selective about what you consume,
Yeah.
and understanding how those choices might be shaping your own ideas about masculinity.
And this is especially important for those of you in the married red pill community, because you're already in the process of deconstructing those covert,
Right.
challenging those unspoken rules in your relationships, and being aware of how media influences you, influences your perception of masculinity. That's a big part of that process.
Now, we've talked a lot about the challenges, the pressures, the whole double bind thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to shift gears a bit and talk about solution. How does Riker, offer a path forward? How do men break free from all this and reclaim, a sense of authentic masculinity?
That's where things get really interesting. He argues that reclaiming that authentic masculinity, it's a journey. It's self-discovery.
Okay.
It's shedding those layers of societal conditioning and getting back in touch with who you really are.
And that journey, I imagine, it looks different for every man.
Or there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But Riker offers some, core principles, things that can guide us.
Yeah.
He talks about vulnerability, emotional intelligence, evolved leadership. He encourages men to find positive role models, build supportive communities, and challenge those expectations, the societal ones, that don't serve them anymore.
This is starting to sound like, like a roadmap for the red pill man.
Right, it is, in a way.
It's about taking control, understanding the rules of the game, and then choosing to play by your own rules.
Exactly. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll actually get into those specific strategies, those actionable steps that men can take to reclaim that authentic masculinity.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive, into the double bind of toxic masculinity. We've been unpacking all this from the historical roots to the institutions that kind of keep this thing going. But let's get practical, For you guys in the married red pill community, actively working on those covert contracts, where do we go from here? Like, how do we actually put all this into action?
Well, Riker, he offers some real concrete strategies for reclaiming that authentic masculine. And I think for those familiar with, the red pill philosophy, this will really resonate. He starts with building a supportive community, finding your tribe, guys who get it.
Yeah.
The struggles, the pressures, the unique challenges you face, especially as red pill men navigating marriage.
Makes sense, right?
Right.
It's like that saying, iron sharpens iron. Surround yourself with guys who understand, who can support you, challenge you, and help you stay on track.
Exactly. It's about creating that space,
Yeah.
where you can be open and honest, share your experiences without being judged. And for red pill men who often feel like outsiders, misunderstood by mainstream society, having that brotherhood, that sense of belonging, it can be really powerful.
Now, building that community, that's a great start. But there's got to be more individual aspect to this too, right? Like, what can individual men do to kind of break free on their own?
Riker talks about setting boundaries, and this is huge, especially for the married red pill guy. It's about recognizing those covert contracts, those unspoken expectations in your relationships, and having the guts to renegotiate them.
So it's about recognizing those moments. Right?
Yeah.
When you feel pressured to play a role or live up to some expectation that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And then being able to say, hey, this isn't working for me.
Exactly. It's communicating your needs, setting those limits, and being willing to walk away from situations that aren't serving you anymore. And this can be tough, especially for guys who are used to putting everyone else first.
It's like, unlearning years of programming.
Yeah.
It's recognizing those patterns, those ingrained beliefs that have been holding you back, and then choosing to act differently.
And that leads to the next step, which is challenging those societal expectations. Riker says you can't escape the double bind without addressing those deep-seated beliefs about masculinity, the ones we've internalized without even realizing it.
So it's not just about setting boundaries in your personal life, it's about questioning those bigger societal narratives that try to define like what it means to be a man.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those moments when you're judged, shamed, criticized for not fitting into that mold, and then having the courage to say, wait, who gets to decide what's manly? Why am I letting these external forces dictate my worth?
This is where that red pill philosophy comes in, right?
It does.
It's about waking up to those societal scripts, seeing them for what they are, often arbitrary and limiting, and then writing your own script.
Exactly. And this might mean some difficult conversation. You might have to challenge your family, your friends, even colleagues, people who might be clinging to those outdated ideas about masculinity.
It's about standing your ground, asserting your right to define your own masculinity, even if it means going against the grain.
Now, throughout this deep dive, we've talked a lot about vulnerability, and I think it's worth revisiting because it's such a key part of reclaiming that authentic masculinity. For you guys in the married red pill community, this might be the toughest part because vulnerability, it goes against that traditional image of stoicism.
Yeah, like showing vulnerability as a weakness, right? Makes you less of a man. But Riker, he turns that on its head.
He says vulnerability is actually a sign of strength.
Okay.
It takes courage to be open, to share your fears and insecurities, to ask for help when you need it. And in a marriage, being vulnerable with your partner, that can be really powerful.
So creating that space for intimacy,
Yeah.
for real connection, for building a relationship based on trust and being genuine.
And this links back to that red pill idea of building a strong frame. True strength comes from knowing yourself, owning your vulnerabilities, not being afraid to show them. It's about being secure in who you are, even if it means challenging those traditional expectations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. Reclaiming authentic masculinity, it's not about rejecting everything you've been taught. It's about taking ownership of your journey. It's about questioning those beliefs, challenging those expectations, and defining for yourself what it means to be a man, in today's world.
It's about embracing both the strength and the vulnerability, the ambition and the compassion, the leadership and the willingness to learn and grow, and knowing that this journey, it's ongoing, a lifelong process of evolution and self-discovery.
If this deep dive resonated with you and you're ready to explore these ideas further, I definitely recommend checking out The Double Bind of Toxic Masculinity by Conrad Riker. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Playbook. It's a powerful book, and it'll challenge you to think differently and empower you to define what it means to be a man on your own terms.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the power to redefine masculinity lies within you.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep evolving, and keep diving deep.